Welcome to episode 38 of Broad Street Hustle. I'm your host, Tommy Nanny. We got a big show on tap tonight. I'm gonna introduce our host because I don't want to give away what our show is. And you will know what one of our segments is by one of our guests. So, as always, joining me, Jason Sayada.
What's going on, Tom?
Doing well. And Jimmy Chalk.
Can't imagine what we might talk about tonight.
And we didn't have Meeker last week. Is that correct? Do I remember correctly?
We did not.
So we got him back, Christopher Michael Meeker, back on the show.
Back in the East Coast, no longer in Mexico, but the water's done a little bit of a number on my stomach over the last couple of days. So I'm paying for that trip in a lot of ways.
Did you have alcohol poisoning like you had on the ride home from Vegas?
No.
A couple of years? It wasn't alcohol poisoning? Okay.
And the next guest means only one thing. It must be horse racing season is back. Jimmy D.
Good to be back, fellas. Good to see you guys again. And as a regular listener to your broadcast with the thousands and thousands of listeners that listen to this broadcast, I've enjoyed it.
If you add all of them up and multiply it by 100.
We've recently hit 5 figures listener.
Oh, there you go.
That's because I download it on multiple platforms every week.
Chalky sits there every 5 minutes and hits download.
It's great to see you guys. Great to be back.
All right. So that brings us to what we got. We're going to recap last week, the divisional round, go through some of the games, some of the picks. Obviously, we're going to look at championship week, focus in on the Eagles, Niners, and then obviously Kansas City and Cincinnati matchup. Once we finish with all the football, we're going to go into the Pegasus World Cup. For me, it's kind of the kickoff of the season. I know last week had a 3-year-old race that kind of kicked it off, but Pegasus kind of kicks it off here at Gulfstream, and then kind of rolls right into Derby fever. And it's pretty much every weekend there's something going on. So we'll handicap the late pick 4 that will finish off with the Pegasus race at Gulfstream Park. So let's jump right into it. Let's take a look at last week. Now I'll go to Meeker. You weren't on the show. You gave picks. You weren't on the show, but what was your overall impression of last week? Did you get to see the games?
Yeah, we got to see, definitely. They had a really nice setup for us in Mexico for the game after our dinner. So I got to see every moment of that snoozer of a game that I kind of knew was going to happen. Look, the Eagles just imposed their will all game on the Giants. I don't know. A lot of national pundits thought the Giants were live dog in this game, and Jason and I were texting during the week, and I just couldn't really understand why they were. I don't really think the Giants are a great team, and I guess it showed in this game. So from the jump, the Eagles kind of jumped on them early, established a passing game early, and then once they were ahead, just basically ran all over them. Had 268 yards rushing. I don't think they were in any danger of losing that game at any point. Gannon called a great game, and look, the Giants just don't have the talent to compete with the Eagles, and it showed in that game. And, it kind of turned out the way I thought. Eagles blow out, move on to the next round, and the end of the Giant season.
Yeah, Jason, anything?
Yeah, I mean, it's basically just was a massacre, as I think we pretty much all predicted. Giants are just a mediocre team that beat a gigantic fraud in the Vikings. And the Eagles basically did whatever they wanted offensively on the Giants. I mean, every drive where they were just, running their offense, just basically everything worked. And then Daniel Jones turned back into the Daniel Jones on the defensive side. So, no sweat, easy win. I know I crushed things with betting on that game. That was an easy game. We should have made it our Twitter pick. I don't think we actually had a Twitter pick last week. If I remember correctly, we didn't put one out there.
I don't think anything got posted.
Nah, we should have made this one it. But yeah, I mean, it was as easy as a game. It was never in doubt. After the first 2 drives, the game was basically over. So won't be that easy this week. But yeah, it's pretty easy.
Yeah, I mean, nothing to add. I watched Daniel Jones play 63. consecutive football games of subpar football. Played one good football game, and everybody thought he was Dan Marino. I didn't understand it. I didn't have the game close. I probably undershot what I actually thought it could have been. I wish I realized it was the same day as the 38-7 victory the Eagles had on the Vikings, because I would have bet that exact score, and God knows what odds probably could have got on that one. Yeah, I mean, I put nothing into that game. It was good for the Eagles going into this week because they actually got to rest a little bit towards the end of the second half. Didn't really have to push the buttons, didn't have to show too much of their kind of all their playbook. So easy win, nice win going into the championship week. Chalky?
Nothing too much to add. I think by the second play of the game, when Hurts hit that 40-yard pass to Smith, it was like, all right, they're fired up, they're ready to go, and they're cranked, and it's gonna be a win. And everybody, well, there's no way Hurts is gonna be 100%. Well, maybe he's not, but he didn't look any worse for wear than any of the other games before he got hurt. So if he's sore, he's not showing it. I think I'm the only one that said the Giants would cover with the hook. And that was thinking more along the lines of if the Eagles are up 21 in the fourth quarter, you could get a garbage touchdown or two. And for some reason, the Giants came out down 28 points and decided to establish the run with a 7-minute drive in the second half, which got them a touchdown. But it also took a big chunk of the clock off. So, the Eagles were clear. Just because they blew them out doesn't mean they're going to roll that into this week, but there wasn't anything bad coming out of it for the Eagles, so that was obviously a good thing.
How about you, Jimmy D? What was your impression of the game?
Yeah, there's an old saying in investments that past performance is no guarantee of future results. Well, that's baloney. It's baloney with horse racing, and it's baloney with football games. If anybody watched that first Giants game during the season, the Eagles crushed them, dominated every aspect of the game. Throw out that Week 18 game. That was nonsense. And it played the Hoyle. It actually played the Hoyle. The game played the way it should have been played. And it was an easy victory. Of course, now it's a different story this week, but nice to be home.
Well, one thing I'll throw in is I thought it was interesting, if you guys noticed, every time Hurts ran the ball, when he fell, did you notice how he was falling on his left side?
Yep.
Never. I don't think at any time he was tackled onto his right side. So he definitely was. Whether they practiced something or whether he just knew in his head to protect that right shoulder. He was every time he got tackled, he was rolling to his left side. So.
And you think for a right-handed quarterback, that would almost be natural. Like you would never want to land on your throwing shoulder if you can help it. But
yeah.
I actually did not notice that. But
yeah,
good point.
Not to spend. I was going to say not to spend too much time on this, but about week 9 or 10, we had a conversation about what the Giants are going to have to do in the offseason and whether they're going to sign Daniel Jones. And all I'm hearing is that that's going to happen. Whether it comes with a big price tag, I'm not sure, but. They don't really have a lot of options. And I remember you guys saying, well, I don't think they'll re-sign him. They'll let him go. They'll move on from him. I don't see it. I don't see what their options are going to be. So you're going to have a very average quarterback for the next 5 years if you're the Giants, if they have to sign him.
I wonder if they could franchise him. Does anybody know if they have a franchise available?
They could. I saw that Barkley might be the one that gets the 1-year tag if they want to bring him back and re-up, because it'll be a smaller number than Jones. I mean, I could definitely see a short-term, 2-3 year deal maybe with Jones. I don't think they would go the full 5 or whatever the most.
Nobody's knocking down the door for Daniel Jones.
No,
but and it seems like this regime is a little better equipped to build a team than Gettleman and his crew. I mean, he took Barkley number 2. You can't take a back second in the draft. I'm sorry anymore, but.
All right. What about the Jason? Back to you. Any thoughts? I mean, you can lump all the games in. You don't have to go game by game. What anything overall from last week?
I mean, I'll briefly touch on every game. Jacksonville and Kansas City. Obviously the backdoor field goal gave Jacksonville a cover, and then the Mahomes injury kind of, I guess, kept Jacksonville in the game. I mean, Jacksonville was right there until they start turning the ball over. Agnew fumbled. I think it was on the 5-yard line. I mean, that was. Really hurt them, and then Lawrence threw the bad interception, and that was pretty much the game. So, They were right there to win the game. Probably a lot of it was because Mahomes was limited, but that was in question. Even though it was a backdoor to cover, I mean, it really was never a blowout. Bengals and Bills. Bengals just dominated the line of scrimmage on both sides of the ball. Never looked like they were, the Bills were going to win that game. I mean, from the get go, it just looked like the Bengals were just going to win the game. Bills, I guess, somewhat of a fraud. I don't know. I did hear a lot of people saying the snow kind of helped the Bengals' offensive line because snow, you can't get traction on the defensive line in snow, so they weren't really able to kind of, get traction and fight off blocks. So it's kind of pretty easy for the Bengals line to block them. That might be a different story this week. And then 49ers Cowboys, a tough defensive battle. Dak was his usual turnover-prone self. He basically lost the game. The Cowboys defense played a pretty good game, though. I think the rest of the Cowboys team played well, except for Dak. 49ers overall didn't look great, but it never looked like they were going to lose the game to me. I mean, it always looked like they were going to pull it out. So, those are my thoughts.
Chalky, yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'll go quickly. So, the Jacksonville cover is what I was afraid of, and laying 7.5 with the Eagles. It happened in that game. Obviously, did not happen with the Eagles. I mean, Mahomes. If you had a KC future, you probably couldn't breathe for about 10, 15 minutes there because it looked like he could have been like broken. Like a Joe, not quite as bad as Joe Theismann, but he got back in there, but was clearly hindered. But I just say, it's a small sample size considered to a lot of the coaches out there, but Peterson has his team ready to play in big games. They don't always win, obviously, but in the playoffs, except for I think the playoff game against Seattle, the Eagles had, he's been the underdog, and obviously he won the Super Bowl, and then he beat the Bears next year and almost knocked off New Orleans in New Orleans, and they came ready to play. So he's had underman teams, but I think that's a credit to him. So he wasn't a one-hit wonder necessarily here. Bengals beat the hell out of the Bills, and I mean, the Bills, their pass rush wasn't the same since Miller got hurt and Allen's got the elbow problem, but 4/5 of Cincinnati's line is out, so I don't buy that as being the main reason, but they were not the Bills that were in the first half of the season, and I did think towards the end of the first half that Dallas was in a good position to maybe win that game until the interception Dak threw. They were up for a good chunk of the half, and then I think 49ers got a field goal at about 4.5 left, and then Dak throws the interception after Pollard gets hurt, which also I think changed the dynamic a little bit for their offense, and then come back down. They got lucky because I don't know what that clock management was at the end of the half with Shanahan and not calling timeouts, and then Purdy almost ran out of time with the 8-second play, so they got a little bit lucky and got that, but second half they certainly felt like they were in control, and it was an amusing last ditch play that they ran to try to get 80 yards by throwing a 5-yard pass across the middle. But
all right, and Meeker.
Yeah, you guys touched on most of it. Look, Dak Prescott is Dak Prescott. I mean, I just don't think he is a clutch quarterback. He made, obviously, a lot of bad decisions in this game, left some points on the field. His interceptions turned into points for San Fran, and San Fran just played, I guess it's a cliche, but they played within themselves. They didn't put Purdy in a position to have to win the game, and their defense, they leaned on their defense, and their defense played like their defense plays, and they won the game. A couple big plays to Kittle, who was a monster in that game. But other than that, San Fran's just a better team than Dallas. And, you guys touched on everything else when it comes to that. So I don't think McCarthy lost the game. I don't know how you guys think. I don't think he coached badly. I mean, Dallas was in the game most of it. They had a chance in the fourth quarter, just didn't pull it out. Their quarterback just didn't play well. With Cincinnati Buffalo, I think the one thing that I'm hearing a lot, especially on national sports radio, is that I just think that Buffalo just depends so much on Josh Allen to win games that it's really not good. for the team. I think they have to find some sort of running game going in the next year if they're going to be a Super Bowl team. And Cincinnati, like you said, Jason, they dominated on both sides of the ball. They really controlled the game. Burrow played really well. Didn't make any mistakes, and here we go again. Cincinnati, Kansas City in the AFC Championship. And then with the Chiefs, the only thing I would say is that I think they have a little bit of an underrated rushing attack. I mean, that drive when Mahomes got hurt and Henny had to come into the game, I think they ran the ball 8 or 9 times and dominated on that drive. I think, if that goes somewhere else, like if that drive doesn't work out or Henny makes a bad throw, Jacksonville could possibly pull that game out and win.
The one thing, not to interrupt you, but the one thing I would say is Jacksonville's defense, and I should have brought it up, was not good. Like,
No.
they didn't make stops at all.
Yeah, that's why you guys were saying. I didn't think Jacksonville was in that game. They had 0 pass rush against a guy who couldn't walk.
Defense was bad.
Not to mention, Kelsey was wide open
all
I
game.
can't even tell you how many times. Yeah, I don't. So they had no pass rush. The quarterback couldn't move, and they were leaving receivers wide open. So I don't really see where they played well. I think they were only in the game because Mahomes was missing wide open receivers because he couldn't plant his foot.
He couldn't plant his foot.
Yeah, I mean, if Mahomes is healthy, that's a 20-point game in my opinion.
Yeah, well, he was only out for 2 possessions, and the one possession.
Yeah, but he wasn't 100%.
Forget about it. He couldn't throw. He was throwing with his all arm. He couldn't use his legs at all. All his passes were high. He missed the receiver in the end zone. Like even the touchdown, the guy had to go way up to get it.
And that's going to be. I'm sure we're going to be talking about that, with the AFC Championship. So we'll leave it there. But Chiefs, Cincinnati again. We'll see how it goes. I think home field might have a little bit to do with it. We'll see.
Jimmy D, any thoughts overall on
It's funny. I saw those games a little differently than you guys saw it. Maybe different face, different view, but I didn't see that game as close at all. For instance, that Kansas City game. If you go back to the first series, Kansas City played them like it was a schoolyard team. He had every kind of flick, flaw, lateral, everything that went into the game in that first. It was almost comedic the way they drove the first drive against Jacksonville. And sometimes when the injury happened, it changed the whole complexion of the game. They played a much more conservative game after that. But maybe that's a good thing, because when you don't show your whole arsenal to a team you're going to play next week, the surprise element is in your favor. Same thing goes with the Eagles. Once they wrapped that game up, they played a very conservative game. And I don't want to get into it either, because I know we're going to talk about it later. But the two teams that between Kansas City and Philadelphia, that bye meant so much to those two teams, and those other teams are getting beat up along the way. And I think that sets up for, I guess I'm giving it away, but it sets up for a home team bonanza this weekend for me. I did not see that Kansas City game as being close. I know they covered the spread, but, and the other game was not close. So, come to it. Cincinnati, they were 2 weeks ago, they were one stupid play away from getting eliminated from this series. So, I'm not so sure that I'm sold on that either. I think they're playing way above their heads, which they did last year to their benefit. They peaked at the right time. That's what it takes a lot of times in a playoff situation. But I think they're both of these road teams are going into a very nasty environment this weekend.
I don't really think that. Go ahead, Tom. Go.
No, I was going to say I've seen them closer to Jimmy D, where I didn't think that Kansas City game was as close as the score was. Eagles game we talked about, Buffalo game. I mean, that, like Jason said, that was just a slaughter from the whistle. Buffalo really was never in that game, and the Dallas game, Dak was the sole reason why they lost the game. I mean, that's what it came down to. San Francisco was just like a typical Shanahan type of offense at the end, where in the fourth quarter, I don't know what he was doing with his play clock and the play calling, but I think he just figured, he knew that Dallas wasn't going to score, and that's how they played it. So
I was just going to say Mitchell, when he ran out of bounds on that drive.
Oh yeah.
I mean,
gave him a chance.
If I was his coach, I'd still have him by the face mask.
Yeah.
But I mean, honestly, I thought the there was not a very entertaining week as far as just entertainment value. Didn't really find any of the games to be any. Even the Dallas game, which was the closest of the games, was a pretty boring game for what it's worth. So thought it was a little disappointing of a week. Mika, you were going to add something?
I was just going to say that I don't think, even though I don't want to give it away either who I like in that Kansas City Cincinnati game, but I don't think that just because they didn't show much because Mahomes was out like a good portion of the game, or they didn't show their, what Jimmy was saying, they didn't show. These two teams are extremely familiar with each other. I don't think it really matters. They've played each other. Obviously, they played each other last year in the AFC Championship. They played each other this year and played in regular season last year. So they have enough enough film on each other. I don't think it would matter what was happening, whether Cincinnati blew Buffalo out or Kansas City played a close game or didn't going into this week. I don't really take too much into that.
Yeah, and we'll get into it. But one thing with last year's game is nobody talks about it. I mean, Kansas City had like a 10-point lead in the fourth quarter, and then Mahomes bang his head or do something goofy, and then after that, he was like not the same quarterback.
Absolutely.
So, I tend to think maybe he had a concussion or something that they didn't pull him out of the game. So,
not to jump ahead, but I think the 3 games Cincinnati's won, KC has had the lead on the fourth with a 75% win probability or whatever. So, take that for what it's worth. We'll talk about it later. Just one last thing on the Jacksonville game. I know I was giving Peterson credit. I wasn't trying to say that it was a close game. I just thought that he had the team ready to play. There's a big mismatch in talent, so that was going to play out. But,
they let Chad Henne drive 98 yards.
Well, but listen,
that's
the defense is only so good. But they went out real quick. At the start of the game, Casey scores a touchdown. They could have folded up and went home. They come back and score again. They let Henne drive down. Okay, Mahomes isn't coming back. That's it. They come back and score before the half. The only reason it was a one-score game in the end was Mahomes being hobbled, but Jacksonville didn't quit either. They're just not as good of a team, and that showed. But, we've seen that Giants team quit, okay? That they quit in that game, like against the Eagles. So Jacksonville did not do that. So I'm giving Peterson a little bit of credit for that, but it was not a close game like Jacksonville was going to pull it out in my mind.
Okay. Thank you for clearing that up for us. Let's move on to Jason. Do you want to just go over last week, I guess, real quickly, and then we'll jump into the talking about the game?
Yeah, sure. It's pretty irrelevant with the overall stats for the league. The one thing I will say is 5-1 overs for week 1 of the playoffs and 0-4 overs for week 2. So I gave you guys that under 196.5. I remortgaged my house. I said I was going to remortgage my house on it. So I was able to keep my house, and now I've got a down payment for a house down the shore based on that bet. So, I'll give it our overall records. We might have a playoff wizard on our hands here. Meeker went 4-0 in his picks last week. And the sky didn't fall. There wasn't a nuclear Armageddon. There's nothing like that happened. But Meeker went 4-0 in his picks. So he led the way, and he's now 7-3 in the playoffs. So I guess we'll go with I went 2-2. I'm now 5-5 in the playoffs. Chalky went 1-3. He is also 5-5, I believe, in the playoffs. And Tommy went 1-3 also. He is now 4-6 in the playoffs. So that's just a quick update on our picks.
And Jimmy D went 1-0.
Oh, geez. Thank you. Jimmy D, yes, he did give the Eagles pick. He said they would slaughter them. So he's perfect, 1-0.
And just
so he's actually got the best.
Just for my new friend Meeker, the church homily was the last shall be first. So perhaps the religious aspect, this could be your month.
That
a highly Catholic country over the weekend. Maybe that was the reason.
Look, if you followed Meeker's picks during the year, you had to do a lot of things that you're not proud of to have enough money to bet his playoff picks. So
Yeah.
that's all I'm gonna say.
And Meeker actually is a devil worshiper, so it's probably the other thing the other side of it that's working right now for Meeker.
I tried, Chris. I tried.
That's okay.
All right, let's move on. We'll start with the NFC because it is the Eagles. So we'll do a your thoughts on the game. What do you see it as? Meeker, we'll start with you again. You're the wizard. Eagles, San Fran. What is that? 2.5? I guess still 3. I saw 3 in some of the.
So, 3.5.
More.
Has it hit 3?
I mean, some places are juicing it. Like it's minus 120 with the Eagles, 2.5 right now on DraftKings. Some places don't want to go to 3, but you're not getting 110 at 2.5.
I have a lot of good information from odds makers I'll give when it's my turn on all that stuff, but pretty much I'm seeing 2.5.
Cool.
So
Okay, take us away.
well, the Eagles didn't really have to do a whole lot to win last week, so they didn't have to stretch the field versus the Giants, and they were in control early, and they ran the ball down their throat in the second half. I don't think that's going to obviously happen this week. I do think the Eagles have to hit on some big plays to beat this team. I think that, Hurts is not going to be able to really get outside. I think he's going to have to run between the tackles because they're so fast on defense. I think they'll be able to chase him down if they're trying to run him outside on these RPOs. I think they have to limit Bosa, obviously, on his stunts and his loops and the rushes and the designs that they have on their defensive line. I think the one thing I read was that of the 4 quarterbacks that are in the playoffs right now, that Hurts is the least efficient on cover 3 defenses. So they play cover 3 a lot, 35% of the time is what I'm reading, and we'll see, if that's going to bother him. I don't think there's anything wrong with Hurts, especially throwing the ball. I think they may be a little bit tentative with having him run, but I think that, the Eagles will score some points in this game, but it's going to be, obviously a tough game. For the Eagles defense, I think they need to pressure Purdy, get him uncomfortable, and make him force throws that, and hope he makes a mistake and, hope he turns into the pumpkin. And I don't know if they're going to be able to stop Kittle, but they're going to have to blanket him because he's obviously Purdy's favorite target. And also try and keep them under 100 yards rushing because since McCaffrey's been there, and it's not by accident that they're 12-0 since they acquired Christian McCaffrey. So he's a threat, and obviously in both parts of the passing game and rushing game. But I don't know if they're going to actually stop him, but slowing him down I think is important. I don't know what else to add to that. I mean, if San Fran, stays in cover 3 and gets to Hurts, that's probably their key to winning the game. Keep the Eagles to 3 points instead of getting in the end zone like they did with Dallas. Get McCaffrey in space and let him make a big play. I mean, it's going to come down to me like maybe a few big plays in this game are going to win the game. I do think the Eagles are going to win. I'm going to give you a 23-20 score. It's going to be right on the number, I think. I don't know if the number will be 3 by game time, but I think the big edge may be that they're playing in Philadelphia. And I'm going to give them the edge because they're playing at home. Neutral field, I would have a hard time picking this game, but I think the Eagles win by 3.
Okay, sounds good. Chalky?
I think we've kind of been saying it, but these are the 2 best teams in the NFC, so it should be a good game. And San Francisco's on a roll, and Eagles are 10-1 or whatever in the last 11 games Hurts has played. So everybody's coming in, with a lot of momentum. I think they're evenly matched teams. I think there are a few matchups and external factors like playing at the link that are in the Eagles' favor. Now Purdy played only 2 road games. One of them was Seattle, which is notoriously a loud place to play, and he did okay, not great, but he was all right there. The other game was Vegas, where half the crowd was in from San Francisco anyway. And, the history of a rookie quarterback has never gotten to the Super Bowl. And, Meeker's talking about quarterbacks left in the playoffs. So I don't know how much cover 3 Purdy's even seen to even rank, let alone be effective against it as it ranks. But where the Eagles are a little weak is the middle and at linebacker, and San Francisco has the weapons to exploit that between Kittle and Ayuk and Debo can get whatever, McCaffrey coming out of the backfield. Great line. I think the Eagles have an advantage on both sides of the ball at the line, even if it's slight. And Shanahan's a good prepper for the game, but as you were kind of saying, Tom, his in-game management is definitely questionable at times. So I think in-game, Sirianni has the advantage there. The best coordinator is probably Ryans, who rightfully so will be getting a head coaching job, it sounds like. And he's fairly good at scheming. I think this sets up for an Eagles win, except for the fact that I have lifelong trauma as a Philadelphia sports fan. So I'm taking San Francisco 23-20.
And the sun will rise tomorrow. They're the 2 guarantees that I knew going into today. Chalky taking the Niners.
But are you taking the 49ers just because
it's like reverse jinx?
Come on.
Yeah,
who do you think's going to win the game?
Irish thing.
If you think the Eagles are going to win the game, enough of this nonsense.
I think
the Eagles.
I think San Francisco is going to win the game because this is the 3rd time in 4 years they have a little bit more experience in the big game, and I'll say they find a way to pull it out.
Well, that's a good analysis.
Not really, but it's okay.
I mean, we've proven experience don't mean that much. I mean, the Eagles had no experience in the Super Bowl against some of the most dominant, experienced players in the Patriots, and you saw what happened. So, Jimmy D, take us away.
Sure. Listen, I made a living in another life wishing and praying that the Eagles would never win another game. And fortunately, in my other life, they never did win another game. And that's what made Jimmy D who Jimmy D is today. I'll give you an example of that. When Ron Jaworski came out of that tunnel in 1980, his eyes were so big that I couldn't hold enough money on that game because I knew he was going to choke in that game. I had my doubts about Jalen Hurts. I really did. When he left Alabama and went to Oklahoma, I thought he just quit on the competition. Mac Jones was there. Obviously, Tua was there. And when he went to that, and he got redemption at Alabama, but when he left, when he could have had another eligibility year, I said, my God, he's leaving the best program in football. And I had my doubts about the guy. But what he did in this offseason is damn near unbelievable. He's number one. He's a power lifter. I don't know if you guys lift. I lift. I don't lift what he lifts. Never could, never will. But this is a kid that looks like he's thin as a rail and he can't take a shot. Who's dealing with 600 pounds on bars. He's a strong dude, man. I mean, this guy, without a doubt, he ran for 760 yards with 13 TDs. Running. Just running. He played in the toughest division of football. Whether you believe it or not, it comes down to it. Dallas had a winning record. New York had a winning record. In Washington, they were a push. Still was the toughest division of football, and the Eagles dominated the toughest division of football. They from the starting gate to the finish line, the Eagles were number 1 in the league. They got the best cornerbacks in the league. You can just prove this by the Pro Bowl when you see them all playing. They got the best wideouts in the league. Their tight end is arguably the best, and their offensive line is ridiculous. It's going to go down as one of the best offensive lines in Philadelphia history. I've heard Tommy say that. I've heard a couple of you guys say that in the past, and you're absolutely correct. And that's where you win games. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. They'll protect him. I think now that he's had that extra week and he's protected that shoulder, and shoulder injuries they're a bitch, man. You can lift a grocery bag from ShopRite, and all of a sudden you're back to square one with a shoulder injury. That's a nasty injury. So I don't downplay that, but I think in this term, the adrenaline moving. They held the Giants last week. It was ridiculous yardage, and without even going into that. But 5 sacks they had on the Giants. The Eagles had 70 sacks this year. Purdy's going to be in a spot that he's never been in his life. It's a nasty crowd. The link's going to be gelled up, man. And he's got to practice, as they did last week against the Cowboys, with that silent count. That's something this kid's unfamiliar with. It's going to be very difficult to run smoothly when you're trying to play a team that's, you're not going to dominate this team on and I don't want to take nothing away from Purdy. Mr. Irrelevant took an absolute devastating season after Jimmy G went down and made it super for them. And of course, as I think Chris said, they're undefeated with McCaffrey. I get it, but this is a whole different playground. You're in our backyard. This team has played for this. I don't see this game as close, and I can't believe I'm saying that, because I sound like such a homer, and I'm not. But I think the Eagles have played their entire season for this game, and I really think they're going to crush this team, and to the point where I worry about them a little bit 2 weeks from that day, because I think they're so psyched and so geared for this game, and playing a rookie quarterback who, don't forget, had near picks in that Dallas game. I see it as them almost losing, and against Seattle, they were down at half. Say what you want. This guy's not the second coming of Joe Montana, but he's been, I don't want to take nothing away from him either. But you know what? San Francisco's not playing a Honda Civic, man. They're playing a Lamborghini. They better be on their game.
You should be in the locker room, I think, on Sunday, Jimmy.
Just want to throw it out there, Shot Right. We did give you a free plug, so if you're listening, follow us at Broad Street Hustle at Twitter. So, Jason, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm not going to get into the X and O's of it, because I honestly think there's two evenly matched teams. I think, I know I gave out the bet before the playoffs started that it was 2-1 for the Eagles to play the 49ers in the championship game. I thought it was a lock. And it was. I'm not getting into the X and O's. What I'm going to tell you is I've listened this week to now 3 odds makers talk about this game. The first 2 were Johnny Avello, who used to run Win, and now he runs DraftKings. Chris Andrews, who's like a legendary Vegas odds maker. And I'll just talk about those 2 first. They were both adamant that they will not go to 3 points on this game. No matter what happens, they're gonna stick at 2.5. And they were both very surprised at all the money that was coming in on the Eagles, because they both thought that the 49ers are a better team. But the third guy was really the one, and I heard him today, and that was Tom Gable, and he's the guy that runs Borgata's book. And he said he's got crazy, he's going to get crushed if the Eagles go to the Super Bowl and win, because of all future bets and everything, because obviously, Atlantic City is close to Philadelphia. And he's getting tons of money in on the game, on the Eagles, on top of that. And he also said he will not go to 3 points on this game. So 3 points is the key number to me. I think there's a ton of public money coming in on the Eagles on the game. And I'm looking at it that way. And the way I've basically made my picks all year. And I've said from I guess when we did our preview that I thought the 49ers are going to the Super Bowl. I'm not going to change. I'm going to take the 49ers. I'm going to take the points. And I as much as, honestly, for me, obviously I want to see the Eagles go because it's Philadelphia. But monetarily, I will make a lot more money if the Eagles go and win the Super Bowl than if the 49ers do. But I'm sticking with the 49ers. I'm taking them.
That was another one of those guarantees in line with the chalky pick and the sunrise, and that Jason was going to take the 49ers. Yeah, I don't know. For me, it's Jim. I probably are similar to Jimmy D. What he said, a lot of stuff I've written down, he said. And like Jason said, I do think they're very evenly matched teams. But I mean, you look at Super Bowls, you look at playoff runs, and outside of your dominant defenses like the 2000 Ravens, whatever you want to go through. I mean, at some point, the quarterback makes a play. Patrick Mahomes makes it was a 3rd and 15 play to Tyreek Hill in the Super Bowl, and that's why they beat the Niners the first time. And I mean, you can go on the list, and if you just break the game, you got Purdy on one side and Hurts on the other. So who do you think is going to ultimately make the play in the fourth quarter? I mean, I could see the Eagles trailing in the fourth quarter and Hurts making that play. I mean, to Jimmy D's point, Purdy has to go to a silent count. San Francisco already runs a pretty intricate offense, right? Motion on 90% of their plays. I mean, they have guys moving all over the place. Now he has to do all that with a silent count. Not easy. In the first, the Seattle game, he threw like 8 or 9 interceptable passes that obviously weren't intercepted. The Dallas game, in that first half, or even the second half, he threw another 5 or 6 interceptable passes that Dallas didn't take advantage of. And similar to when the Eagles weren't really turning the ball over. I mean, sometimes that's luck. You're having plays that should be turnovers that aren't turnovers. Since Purdy took over, their average starting field position has been their own 36-yard line. Their own 30. Think about that's 2.5 first downs when they're in field goal range. I mean, that's insane. I mean, that's a credit to the Niners defense, obviously, so you can't use it as a minus, but to me, that's a minus for Purdy. And besides the Cowboys last week, they didn't play a defense in the top, like 18, I think it was, in the not 7 games that Purdy played. So I just think it's a lot of smoke and mirrors. And, obviously I believe in the handicappers, but I think they're underestimating that what Purdy has to do on Sunday to win the game. I mean, unless the Niners defense is just going to win the game, which, I guess is a possibility. But I mean, I don't see that Niners defense as one of the greatest defenses of all time. I mean, if you look at their points per game, which is like 16 or 16 and a half, the first 7 or 8 games, they had a game where they let up 7 points, a game where they let up 0 points, a game where they let up 10 points. I mean, that's why their points per game is so good. They were so good in the beginning of the year with that. So I just think it's a lot of smoke and mirrors. I mean, the Eagles defense is just, in my opinion, is just as good. They're 17th in big plays, right? So to Meeker's point, they're in the bottom half of teams allowing big plays. They're not great on third down conversions. They're not great in the red zone. Now they allowed the team to get in the red zone, I think the least amount of any team. But when they do, their conversion rate is not great. So, I think the Eagles offense has what it takes to make enough plays. I thought the over-under is a little high. I think it's like 46.
Yeah.
Which makes me think that, I mean, it's probably going to go over because it seems like it should definitely go under. But I did see it being like a pretty low scoring game. I mean, I had it. I would probably lean towards something ugly like 15-14, 17-16. I think it's going to be a 1 or 2 point game in favor of the Eagles. And like I said, I can see the Eagles trailing in the fourth quarter, and I see Hurts making a play that ultimately wins the game, and Purdy, getting the ball in his hands at the end of the game and just not getting it done. So that's where I'm at.
Well, one thing I will add in is I think on the offensive side of the ball, I think Shanahan is going to rely heavily on running the ball. And to your point, I think that's going to keep the game under. I think he's going to be running McCaffrey and Mitchell and Debo and the fullback. I think they're going to run the ball a ton. And then on the defensive side of the ball, I think their linebackers are key in this game because they're athletic, they're fast, and I think they're gonna take away, like Meeker said, they might take away some of Hurts' running. They might take away some of the middle of the field with Goddard. So that's just my X's and O's, points that I'm going to throw in. But I agree. I think it's going to be low scoring.
I think a nice bet would be, I like the Eagles over. I don't know what the exact yardage is. They're always around 34, 35, 36. Over like longest play of the game. I see the Eagles make it a big play, 50, 60-yard play, something like 45-yard play, something like that. Yeah,
I think their secondary is not great, the 49ers.
No, and they rely on their pass rush. So
yeah, I think
if the rush doesn't get there, they're susceptible to a big play.
Yeah, and I just wanted to throw 2 things in. So I did bet, a couple like quick prop bets. I bet on Brown and Devontae Smith to score because I think one of them is going to score. And then I threw a bet on Mahomes to score the first touchdown. just because it's 30-1, and he will take off if they're inside the 10 and there's nobody there, and maybe Cincinnati's not going to think he's going to run. They're going to leave the middle of the field open. I don't think that's a bad bet.
Yeah, all right. Well, let's get into it because I actually forgot about it, and I looked at the time, and it's already been pretty long. We haven't touched on that game, so
Yeah.
Jason, keep going. I mean, you started with the
Yeah.
Mahomes bet, so
Yeah.
just keep it going.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that. I kind of jumped the gun. But, I think this is a game that kind of seems too easy, right? The Bengals are 3-0 versus Mahomes. Now Mahomes is, banged up and supposedly won't have the mobility that he usually has. But I'll warn you, one thing that Jimmy D mentioned when he was talking about the games last week is the Bengals shouldn't have won that game against the Ravens. They should be out, right? If that crazy play doesn't happen with Huntley fumbling and then it getting returned 99 yards, they're not winning that game. So they beat a bad, like I won't say bad, but they beat a somewhat overrated and fraudulent Bills team last week, and now they look unbeatable coming into.
And they
this
still
game.
have their line is still beat up and out.
Their line's beat
that
up, and
didn't
the Chiefs have some pass rushers. They got Jones, So I'm on the Chiefs in this game. I'm all over the Chiefs. I think the Chiefs win this game.
Okay. And I'll keep it going. I agree. I also like the Chiefs a lot in this game. You go back to the Mahomes injury, which definitely could play a factor, but they also know he's hurt now. So all week they game plan he practiced with the injury. He ran an offense. They're running a game plan with the injury. It's not like it happened during the game last week. Now, Reed, who's notoriously not great at making adjustments on the fly to begin with, they have to go to a different type of style of game. Here, that this is part of their game plan. They know what they're dealing with. So I don't see it being as big a deal now. If the pass rush is getting to him and he loses some of that mobility, obviously that could be a problem. But I think knowing he's injured, they're gonna run a game plan designed for that. And to me, yeah, Cincinnati's line is still beat up. That didn't get fixed because they beat Buffalo. Somehow they were able to protect them pretty well. Maybe it was the snow, etc. But I think that's going to come down to being their biggest problem. I could see Burrows having a pick or two. I could see him getting sacked a whole bunch, and Mahomes is going to make enough plays that he has to make. I don't see it being a ton of scoring, but he's going to make enough plays when he has to, and he's going to pull the game out. And I think they win, single digits, but 6 or 7, somewhere in that range. Meeker?
Yeah, I just wrote down a couple keys to the game for both teams, but with respect to the ankle injury, we always see Mahomes making his most dynamic plays when the play is broken, right? And Kelsey is his biggest bailout, obviously, and we saw that last week. I don't know how many. He had like 1 million catches. I had 14 catches last week or whatever. So with the ankle injury, you just wonder how much time he can buy, if he has to get out of the pocket. And that I worry about a little bit because, KC is at their best when Mahomes is kind of playing schoolyard football. We'll see if that has a impact on the game. But for Cincinnati, they have to, they're 10-0 when they score first. So I think they have to play from in front. They have to exploit this ankle injury if they can, and try and limit Kelsey and tighten up on the receivers and win the turnover battle. But for Kansas City, you had mentioned something. Obviously, the offensive line did play good last week, but they are beat up. And Kansas City, if they get to Burrow without having the blitz with their front four, I think that's a big key to the game too, because Burrow crushes you on the blitz. And he's such a smart quarterback, and you take a sack when he has to, and he takes a lot of them, but he also kills you on the blitz. So I think that's a big key for Kansas City's defense. If Cincinnati can run like they did also last week, which they're kind of an underrated, they have a kind of an underrated run game. I think they keep the game pretty close, and it could be one of those games where whoever has the ball at the end of the game, kind of like the games we've seen them play for the last three times, that it'll be pretty close. I'm not gonna go as high as 6 or 7 on the Kansas City side. I'm going to say 26-23 KC. but they win by a field goal, and it might be one of those. Kansas City's got the ball. It's a tie game. They kick the field goal to win it. I think it's going to be an exciting game. I can't wait to watch it.
Okay, Chalky.
Yeah, so when this line was moving earlier this week it swung to like, I think it was what, 2.5 Cincy minus 2.5. I threw a little money line bet on the Chiefs at that point because I thought that was an overcorrection in the market, thinking that Mahomes, he's not going to be 100%, but that he could be severely limited. Now we don't know how much, but he's playing, and you saw the line swing back. So I'm not changing my opinion. I think Kansas City wins the game, so I would lay the 1.5 on top of that. And as I was, alluded to earlier, if you believe in win probability and all that stuff, well, Kansas City's pulled it out 3 times. I might say you might think, well, win probability doesn't mean nothing because why would they keep being able to win those games? But I think since they do know each other that well, I don't see KC losing if they get in that situation again. And Cincinnati is a team, to what Jason was saying earlier, like there's 2 games last year they should have lost to get to the Super Bowl, but they pulled them out. So they find a way to pull these games out, but I'm not betting on them doing it again this week. I think Kansas City wins.
All right, Jimmy D, take us home.
Well, Mr. Nanny, I'm going to tell you this. This team's been in the championship 5 straight years. Now listen to that comment. 5 straight years. They have the best quarterback in football. 28 touchdown passes, 3 interceptions in 10 home playoff games. 28 touchdown passes. They scored 500 points during the regular season. I'll give you 3 props since we're talking about props here and there. Pacheco over 47.5. He's the Rutgers Flash. That's the best running back on the field, fellas. And it's well complemented by guys who block a little bit better and catch a little bit better in McKinnon. But another prop, big game, Frank Clark against with, I believe, Tom, you had said this earlier, and you cannot minimize the fact that the key offensive linemen for the Cincinnati Bengals are hurt. Alex Kappa, offensive guard, gone with the ankle. Jonah Williams, gone with the knee. I believe Karras is back at center, but he's back limited.
Yeah, he's going to play.
And now Hayden Hurst is a little bit limited. He's playing also. I got it. You're not going to beat the Kansas City Chiefs at home with an injury-prone team. Joe Burrows has been great, and Jamar Chase has been great. And I don't want to take anything away from them. But that running game of Mixon and Pirine, or however he pronounces his name, is soft, to say the least. I don't see this game as that close. I don't see it as a super high-scoring game. I never gave a score in the Eagles game, and so I'll give this. That's 38-17. That's the way I see the Eagles, because it's a beautiful Sunday afternoon in Philadelphia, weather-wise. Kansas City, I see a little bit shorter. I see this as an under. I see maybe Kansas City 27-17, controlling the ball. Little things that we're not watching here. Kelsey's been brilliant. How about Jason Watson, man? Jason Watson's excellent. He's the second tight end on that team. And let me tell you something. He'd be the first tight end on many, many, many teams. And the other guy that's working himself into this lineup, and they got him returning kicks now, but he's catching more and more balls, is Kadarius Toney. That's another prop bet that I'd like to see. Any touchdown, I think he's got a good shot to get in the end zone 3 different ways. I see Kansas City is winning this game. Again, I'm not a homer, but these 2 teams, the way it sets up this weekend, I like both the Eagles and the Kansas City Chiefs.
Okay.
I've seen enough Eli Apple in my day, being a Saints fan, to know that he's not a good cornerback. And, they don't have to throw the ball to Kelsey 14 times. They can get the ball outside on these corners for sure.
All right. Anything else before we wrap this championship week up?
I mean, one thing I'll say is that there are Wong teasers available right now. You could tease Cincinnati up to 7.5, and you could tease San Francisco up to 8.5. I did a Wong teaser where I teased Kansas City up to 7.5, with all the Mahomes injuries when the line changed, and I have San Francisco at 8.5. So you could actually do it now. I could actually anyway, but I could reverse it now and do Cincinnati 7.5. And if the game falls within 7, I have that game covered, and I just
I'm
have
curious to see how many people did that because it's going to be a touchdown game either way, and they got their double on the 49ers now, but they're trying to get a middle with that AFC.
Yeah, so I have that middle
Nothing
available.
wrong with that. That's
I don't know. Yeah, I probably will do it, but yeah. So, and then like I said, I had the prop bets of I think Mahomes. Try the first touchdown of the game, but even if any time is 8-1 on Mahomes, he always runs balls in if everything breaks down. So,
All right. Well, this is the portion we'll say bye to Meeker, I guess, unless he wants to hang for the horses.
why don't you give some horse picks, Meeker?
Totally up to him, but
Secretariat running this weekend?
Yeah.
Go with Secretariat.
we will shift our focus.
He could beat some of these horses from the grave, I think. But
I'll see you guys. Enjoy the games.
Take care, Chris.
All right. Talk to you. We'll shift our focus to Gulfstream Park and the late pick 4, finishing off with the Pegasus World Cup, which take it as you will. I know it's controversial with some folks on Twitter. So let's jump right into it because we're running long. So Chalky, we'll go to you for the Fred W. Hooper. Maybe you can give us a background on who that is. It's a mile, grade 3. Take it away.
he was the grocer on Sesame Street or something, wasn't he? I think Mr. Hooper. But
wasn't he? He was the sheriff, or wasn't Hooper the guy from Jaws? Was that Hooper?
Hooper drives the boat. Yeah.
America, these guys are so young, it's disgusting.
I do not know who Fred Hooper is, but I will say who I think could win this race. So I got 3 horses here. The one Miles D, who I believe is the favorite on the money line with Brown. Ran.
It's our morning line. We got to shift your focus from sports betting to horses.
Yeah. The horse has been laid off for a while, but Brown can have him ready to fire, and he fired off of a layoff before. He's running graded company, so lost some good horses. Again, the layoff gives me a little bit of worry, but Brown can get him ready, and he's shown he can run off a layoff. I also have the 3 Mish. Saffie Joseph. Gulfstream is Joseph's home course, and he doesn't always travel well, but he fires at a pretty good clip here, even in the graded stakes. He'll be on the lead. There'll be other horses on the lead, but as far as horses that'll be out front, he's the one that I would want to include. And then I also threw in the 6 Black Belt, who is coming out of claiming races a couple races ago, so not exactly the best class, but he's shown an affinity to win at a mile at Gulfstream. And those last 2 races, he popped some pretty big numbers. And I honestly don't know much about Peter Walder and what his record is with therapeutics and such. But that's a pretty big jump for a horse to make coming out of the claimant ranks. So he'll be right off the lead. He might get first run and might be able to get across the line. So 1-3-6 for me here.
All right, Jimmy D, what do you say?
Well, the first thing I'll tell you guys is Fred Hooper. It's an old friend of he's Fred Hooper died at 102 years old. I believe it or not, and I kid you not now, my wife and I met his wife, Wanda. She remarried Bob Quigley. Bob Quigley ran the Meadowlands for a while. Bob Quigley was credited with starting the exactas and trifectas. That bet, he was one of the originators. But Hooper was a horse owner. He did a lot of things. Talk about a Renaissance man. He was a boxer. He was a gambler. But one of the things, he had Susan's Girl. You might remember that horse. And Precisionist. Great bloodlines. Olympia Tri-Jet. Tri-Jet, you can trace back the lineage there to American Pharaoh and Justify. So the guy had a big influence on horse racing. And another thing he did, which is very interesting, he was so smart at that time, way ahead of his peers. He brought over Lafitte Pincay, Jorge Velasquez, and Braulio Baeza from South America to ride his horses because he thought that they had a more proficiency in running racehorses and they were better with the horses than the American jocks. And it proved to him, it made him a multi-millionaire. Like I said, we were fortunate enough to hear some of these stories from his wife, of obviously was much younger than he was. He died 20 years ago at 102 years old. So that's who Fred Hooper is. But before I get into that race, I just want to give a shout out to one of my favorite horses, Channel Maker. Channel Maker is making his 50th start tomorrow. 50. He starts in the 9th race at Gulfstream. It's not part of our picks, but I just wanted to state that in an era where horses like Flightline, great horses, are being retired immediately. This horse, of course, he's gelded, but Channel Maker is making his 50th start and going for $4 million tomorrow. That's a testament to being a sound horse, if nothing else. And getting into the first leg on the Hooper 10th race, I kind of go along with Chalky. I think Miles D is ready to run this. He runs well off a layoff. This is a horse that ran in the Travers in 21. He had 100 buyers in the Travers in that race. Lost to Essential Quality. Listen to these horses he lost to. Speaker's Corner, Essential Quality, Midnight Bourbon. I mean, these are real deal horses. Olympiad. This race should be his for the making. It's a mile race. It's a little shorter than he's normally run, but and his works are not that impressive. But Chad Brown's sneaky with that. He's the class of the race. I kind of like him on top. I know you guys throw some horses in after that. I kind of like Mish because Mish is going to be the pace with picking up pennies. They're both Saffie Joseph horses. He's got 4 entered into that race if they all stay in. But they'll be the pace. But I think Miles D will be close enough to pick it up at the end and win that race. And when you got Brown and Brandt, they went away with Brandt went away with the Eclipse Award for owner again. Him and Godolphin, they're big money players in the sport. It's hard to go against them.
Jason, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of speed in this race. Obviously, Miles D is the best horse. It definitely sets up for him too. And he's my only concern. He's been off a year. Is Brown's intent to get him into a race, just to get him going here, or to win the race. So I'm going to spread a little bit. I'm going to use him. I'm also going to use Black Belt, the 6 with Irad. The 7, picking up pennies with Saffie Joseph. And then I'm going to use the 13, 12-volt man with Saffie Joseph and the Tory. And I'm going to have 2 themes in all these races, as you'll see. The first is I'm using every favorite because Gulfstream could chalk out. And the second theme is I'm going to be heavy on Saffie Joseph because, like Chalky said, he basically, does really well at Gulfstream. And, he's got horses in just about every race, and I think he's live in every race.
All right. So I had this as Miles D's race to lose. Sets up perfect for him. He did break his maiden at the 1-turn mile at Belmont, where he just cruised home. He's had 2 good races with Rosario aboard. This is a type of ride Rosario is good with, where off the pace, kind of making that big move at the end. One thing that Jimmy D said, I think it was Jimmy D, to pay attention to, Saffie does have 4 horses in the race, and they all have similar running styles. So if you do see a scratch of some of these horses, that could definitely muck up the pace scenario, and it does change Miles D's chances, and obviously might move up a horse like Mish. So obviously giving these picks out with all the horses running, but something to pay attention to see what the actual scratches look like, and if the pace stays how it is. If the pace stays, if everybody's in, it should be a fast pace, and I have Miles D off the layoff, just kind of blowing by them. All right, let's move on to race 11, which is the Pegasus World Cup Filly and Mare Turf Invitational. Mile on the 16th. It is a grade 3. Jason, you start us off this time.
Yeah, I'm going to go 2 deep here. My main horse is going to be the 3 Wakanaka with Rosario and Mott. Mott's trainer, Rosario jockey, obviously. She's coming out of a key race from Keeneland where she actually won, but then a couple of horses that were in the race came back and won graded stakes races. But I'm also going to throw in the 9, Shanna Sarah. It's Irad and Brown. It's a Grade 1 winner. She just might be the best horse in the race, so I'm not going to toss her, even though Wakanaka did beat her in the last race. But she's, like I said, she's a Grade 1 winner and all. I'm going to use her. I'm just going too deep with the 3 and the 9.
Okay, Jimmy D.
I agree with Jason on this matter. Wakanaka seems to be just rounding into form. Rosario's tough on this particular horse. Mott has trained this horse up to this race. And again, if you look into the past performance charts, who does she lose to? Regal Glory, Modern Games, in Italian. If anybody watched the Eclipse Awards, they were the horses. This horse has only lost to the champions. I really think it's her race to lose. It's a 5-year-old mare that's just coming into her form. Dalika, I believe you pronounce the name that way. I love the jock. I love Brian Hernandez. He can ride anywhere. He might get a piece of the action, and after that, I'd be struggling. Lady Rockstar maybe, but Brendan Walsh is an offer at the meet so far. So any trainer that's an offer when they're in double-digit starters, stay off them. Either he snake bit, something's wrong, the horse is not right. Don't chase him to win. It's just not going to happen. But I would put him third. But I think Wakanaka can win this race going away.
Just to not to burst your bubble, but only because I was bored at work today. Brendan Walsh did win the first race at Gulfstream today. Just
stand corrected.
So you know. Chalky.
So this is not an echo, but Wakanaka is my top choice in the race for all the reasons mentioned. Won that Breeders' Cup undercard race at Keeneland and defeated the favorite here, who was a heavy favorite in that race. And the other horse, I'm only going to go too deep here. I'm going to use Dalika, or Dalika, however it's pronounced. Gulfstream has a lot of favorites, as Jason said, and I'm not using Chad Brown as a favorite, but that last race might have been getting a race into it, but I'm just going to take a chance, take a stand here that horse might not get back to its best form, which even then still could be good enough to win if it's just a little bit worse, but I'm not using the 9 here.
Okay, I'll be singling the 9 here. That was a horse that was hyped up. Everybody was waiting for her to come back, make a start after the Keeneland win. She was backed heavily at Keeneland. That race, she just didn't fire. It was so bad, her performance, that you got to kind of just throw it out and go back to her other races. And I think it's a brown early double to start the pick 4. Obviously the horses that you guys said are logical and would be used as well. I also thought Queen Goddess had a little bit of a shot, only because Gulfstream turf, it does play to speed. And you didn't have tons. I know Dalika has shown speed and not speed, but probably will show speed, but who knows? And then you got Saez, obviously on a speed horse in the 6. So I would, throw that horse in as well. But the 9 would be my big play.
The 6 was my last horse out. I'm with you on that. I just decided not to go with 2 speed horses, but I wouldn't argue with anybody throwing the 6 in there.
All right. Well, let's go to the race 12, which is the Pegasus World Cup Turf Invitational for the boys. Jimmy D, kick us off.
Like the outside. I normally, at Gulfstream, I kind of lay off the outside horses, but I like City Man in this race, the 12 horse. It's come out. It's one of his favorite horses on turf. Rosario's 5 for 7 with this horse. And the horse apparently is knocking down the barn. If you look at those workouts, there's a bullet, there's a bullet, there's a bullet, there's a bullet. If that doesn't show you this horse wants to run, and it's 1 for 1 at Gulfstream at the same distance. And that was a grade 2 in the last outing. This horse is ready to go. And I really do believe I would circle this one, fellas, for the year, because one thing about City Man, when he likes a track, he likes a track. The other track he likes, you've heard me say this in the summer, this horse likes Saratoga. So put a circle around him, and after he wins tomorrow, watch him in the summertime because he'll be back. I would throw in Wit because I think the horse is an honest horse, could get a piece of the action there. But and I was hedging a little bit with this Ivar, the Brazilian bred, with Castellano. Castellano, I was so glad to see he revived his career last year. He really did as a jock. But I know this Lobo trainer, I don't know. He's a little shaky in my eyes. Maybe they'll get a piece, but I think City Man can win this race.
All right. Chalky.
So my top pick here is going to be perhaps a little out there. I'm taking the 3 Atone at 12-1 on top. It could be the lone speed of the race if he follows up on his last time out. He's picking up Irad, so Irad could probably have a choice of a number of different horses here. So taking that mount for Maker, maybe I'm reading too much into it, but could speak to the horse being ready to run. And I think the 10 post out is not great for some of the favorites. I am going to have Ivar up there as an A as well. Only simply, look, he's the class of the race in a lot of ways. If you looked at who he lost to, and he's mostly a miler, but he's run past that and hasn't run bad in either of those races. But some of his losses come with losing ground on both turns, which could definitely happen here, coming with the 10 post. And then as a B, probably. I burned money on this horse in the Breeders' Cup, but I'll do it again. Masterpiece, switching to the Joseph Barn. I'm thinking maybe the Florida Sun treats him a little better in Joseph's barn than the California Sun did when he was with Michael McCarthy. So those would be my picks: 3-10 as A's and 11 as a B.
Okay. So I'm got 4 horses here because I'm light in the other legs. I use the obvious, the 10 and the 12. Ivar, has run good numbers, kind of classy. The 12, City Man, kind of like everything Jimmy D said. And then the other 2, I have Jimmy's horse, Atone. So if you look at the one time did ride that horse, he did put him on the lead. So there's a possibility he's going to show speed. We know Maker can get them going long on the turf, and when he gets them going, they kind of stay in form. So maybe that optional claim that he came back at Aqueduct was an eye opener for him. And then the other one is, Lady Spite Spear. So the mare, another speed horse. Ran a good race in the Breeders' Cup. Has run in company with the females pretty consistently. Has won 3 graded races, so hasn't really done anything wrong. Picks up Saez, who did ride the horse a couple times. Rode her in the Breeders' Cup as well. But it's another one where speed at Gulfstream could be deadly. So if Irad doesn't go with Atone, maybe she's alone on the lead. So I went with her. Jason?
Yeah, I'm also going 4 deep here. I think it's a tough race. I'm not using City Man. I'm sure City Man will now win, but I've always liked the 10 Ivar. Always runs he always runs a good race. Now, can he stretch out? I guess we'll see. I'm willing to use him as one of my horses in case he can't stretch out, but I think he's a pretty good horse. I am also using the 3 Atone. For all the reasons you guys said, Irad's getting them out. It's Maker. He could get them going long. And, he could get comfortable on the lead maybe and just keep going. One horse you guys didn't mention I'm going to use is the 4 Hurricane Dream. It's his first time in the U.S. It's motion. But the reason I really like it is it's the Tory. And to me, the Tory is just schooling these jockeys on
Oh, he had one good race at Santa Anita, and he's been trashed since, just for the record. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
I don't know. I just think he's a really good turf rider, and I'm willing to take a shot on him. He's going to be double digits there. Again, he'll be one of my horses. And then last, I'm going to throw in that Masterpiece like Chalky did too. He's 3 for 3 on turf. Joseph's getting him for the first time. I'm taking a shot, throwing him in. Maybe he likes this distance. Maybe it's meant for him. But those are my 4.
Okay, and then that brings us to the final, the big race, the Pegasus World Cup. I'll kick it off since I haven't gone first. I was spread in this race, but again, I was light in the first two, so I'm able to spread on my ticket. Um, I think if I had to give a top selection, I don't even know if I could. Cyberknife has the outside post, which is tough. Probably would be one of the top picks. I mean, Baffert's got the funded, who's in form very well here. Has run close to the lead, off the lead, so tactical in that way. But I'll just go through who I have. I have the 4 White Barrio. It was a horse that was on the Derby Trail, 4 for 4 at Gulfstream. Safi Joseph, hard to leave off. The Funded, Baffert, hard to leave off. Skippy Longstocking, who was always a horse that won at distance, has run some nice races. Came back at Gulfstream and ran a very good race in the again simplification. And Safi had another horse in that race who was the favorite. And then I have Getter Number, so that's the Miller horse stretching out. Has run good numbers. If stretches out, I think has a 2-turn race at Santa Anita that was well back in the PP. So have him stretching out. Let's see what else. Cyberknife to 10 for obvious reasons, and then I use the other Safi, the O'Connor, the Irish horse. O'Connor, he was the favorite in the Skippy Longstocking race, but he had some kind of shoe issue, if I remember correctly. So, if he comes back, I know he tore it up over, it was Brazil, one of the countries is that. So that's who I got. Chalky.
If he's like some O'Connors, I know the shoe issue was he wasn't wearing any and didn't realize it. But I'm fairly light in this race. I have 1A. Because I'm going to say that this trainer was pointing to this race with this horse, and he's a B teamer, but a lot of the horses are here. My A is 5, defunded for Baffert. He ran him in the Awesome Again, grade 1, in Santa Anita 1. Did not send him to the Breeders' Cup because he knew he couldn't beat Flightline. Ran him back in the Native Diver, won that again. Cyberknife is a horse I didn't like at all going into Derby, and the rest of the year he ran a great campaign, lost pretty much to some of those Eclipse Award winning horses. He ran behind Taiba, Epicenter in the races he didn't won. But I'm going light here because if it chalks out, it's not going to pay much, and I'm not using him here. The B I have is Skippy Longstocking. So I think Joseph